Hello, CoronaWatch viewers, and welcome to our special segment with Loudoun's Chair at Large, Miss Phyllis Randall. Miss Randall, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. Hello to all of your viewers. Yes, I'm Phyllis Randall. I'm Chair at Large of Loudoun County, and that's an important distinction. Um, I am Chair at Large of the board, which means I'm not just a chair. A chair of a board is selected by the people that they serve on the board with. A chair at large is elected from the everyone in the county. So a chair at large gets to hold the gavel for 4 years and set the agenda for 4 years. Upon my election, I became the first person of color in Virginia to be a chair at large in Virginia's history. I'm always so proud of Loudoun for breaking that barrier and breaking that glass ceilings for doing that. A chair at large of a county sets the agenda for the Board of Supervisors and runs the meetings. The Board of Supervisors is a 9-member board that basically runs everything in your county at the local government level. 8 of the supervisors are from district seats, and I'm the chair, and it's a wonderful position. I am in the top of my second term. I was first elected in 2015 and reelected in 2019 to be chair at large of Loudoun County. And as a board, we do everything from setting the local tax rate to land use. Land use is a lot of what we do is land use. We fund the entire county's budget, and so whatever the sheriff's department's money that they have, or the school system's money, and the firefighters and all that, we fund the county. We don't run those departments, but we give them the money to run those departments. So the budget is a huge part of what we do. It's a 4-year term for every supervisor. We all serve 4 years together. We all run every 4 years. And it is so far in my second term just a fantastic job. I love the position. I love getting up every morning and knowing that I get to be chair of Loudoun County, Virginia.
Awesome. We will also be interviewing Loudoun's Chair at Large with Ryan Ahmad and Pranav Kotamraju. And Miss Randall, would you like to get into it now?
Sure, let's get into it.
All right, awesome. So as Loudoun's Chair at Large, you probably know how the COVID response from the county is. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how was the initial COVID response by the county, and how has it evolved now with the second surge that we see?
Well, I always start when I'm talking about COVID with the current COVID numbers. So I have them right here. Let me go through those numbers, and then we'll talk about some of those things, okay? The current COVID numbers in Loudoun, since COVID began in basically January, February of this year, we've now had 10,049 cases of COVID in Loudoun County. We've had 556 people who have to be hospitalized. And unfortunately, we've had 149 deaths in Loudoun County. That also means, though, we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have recovered. And that's a great thing. Right now, our percent positive rate is about 8.8%, which is higher than we want it to be. It's been as low as 4.4%. It's been as high as, well, this is the highest it's been actually. And we want to actually keep that rate below 5%. So 8.8% is a bit of a high rate. And we're going to try to get that lower. But as you know, and as you just said, we're in a bit of a surge right now. So COVID in Loudoun County the entire time. Well, of course, with the rest of the country, once COVID first started, we just didn't know what this was. And so everyone, the entire Commonwealth, county, and country was trying to figure it out. And so what we saw was a lot of deaths early on, especially in what's called congregate care communities. So communities where older people live. We saw quite a few deaths there, and COVID numbers that were really, unfortunately, pretty high in those communities. We also saw our first responders have higher COVID numbers for obvious reasons. If you're a first responder, even when you have the proper PPE, you're probably going to be so close to the person physically that it's more likely that the spread could happen, that you could contract the virus from them. So early on, we had a lot of cases like everybody else, and like everybody else, those were in our higher risk communities and with our first responders. Our hospitals in Loudoun, is important to know that we have 2 hospitals that are both part of a hospital system. And so we have Inova Hospital, which is part of the Inova system. We have Stone Springs Hospital, which is part of the HCA system. So when I say the hospitals were overwhelmed, I don't necessarily mean that Loudoun Inova Hospital was overwhelmed or Loudoun Stone Springs was overwhelmed. but the hospital system was overwhelmed. And so it's really important to not let your hospital system get overwhelmed. And so Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, those hospitals are getting pretty full. And so although we had space in Loudoun's hospital, we had to make sure that we kept that space because we were kind of the last hospital in the system to not get overwhelmed. So early on, Northern Virginia numbers were higher. So we moved to phase 1, 2 weeks after the rest of the Virginia because our hospital systems are overwhelmed because our numbers were higher. Well, after that kind of initial surge, we start really trying to figure it out. And we learned what works, and what works better than anything else is mask. We know that for a fact. Mask and social distancing works. And when we start doing that, we start doing mask and social distancing, we saw our numbers, like everybody else's numbers, go down. And they stayed pretty steadily down throughout the summer and throughout really most of the early fall. And now, unfortunately, they're going back up. And they're going back up for a lot of reasons. One, as you get into colder months, people go back in their homes. Two, according to Dr. Goodfriend, who's our state health director in Loudoun County, virus is just a little more, has a little more strength in colder weather. And so they're going to go back up for those reasons. And also because people have let their guard down some, unfortunately. So they're not wearing masks as much. They're not social distancing. They're assuming if they're in small groups of people that they know, that their friends couldn't possibly have COVID. And so the numbers are going back up. We saw a little tick up after Halloween from 3 Halloween parties in Virginia that had the numbers tick up. And we're quite worried about what we're going to see in 2 weeks because of the Thanksgiving numbers. And I know everyone is exhausted from COVID. We're all exhausted. I know that. God knows I'm exhausted. Our hospital staff, God love them, are really exhausted, and our first responders. But the truth is, we might be tired of COVID, but COVID's not tired of us. And so we just have to kind of hold on and keep doing the things we know for a little while longer.
Do you think cases are going to like spike up even more coming December?
Well, it's not whether I think it, it's whether our health director, Dr. David Goodfriend, believes it, and he does. And he has warned us against this, and he said it's going to be for a couple of reasons. One, as I said, people are not wearing masks as much. Two, if you went out, and I didn't, but I saw the pictures over the weekend shopping, people really weren't social distancing. They were wearing masks, and that's good. But you go to the stores, and although the stores have done a great job of putting like the little markers on the floor that says this is 6 feet, people weren't doing that. But the biggest reason is because people were gathering in small groups over 5 to 10 people for Thanksgiving. And again, you know, it's people you know, people you love, it's your family, it's your close friends. And so you just assume they can't have COVID because, you know, how would that be possible? But they do. And so even one person in a group of 10 can be, you know, really dangerous. And so people didn't just gather with their immediate family unit in their home. They went out. And so those numbers are going to spike. And we're going to see that spike probably 2 weeks after Thanksgiving is when we'll start to see those spikes happen.
Do you believe that shopping and all those things during Black Friday, do you think those will contribute to a large scale of spikes in
They will.
Virginia?
They will. So, and again, this is with Dr. Goodfriend, and Dr. Goodfriend, who is our state health director in Loudoun County, but he has been really in the region one of the leading voices on COVID, teaching us what to do and how to do it. And he has just been, I mean, you know, just not just in Northern Virginia, but the entire metropolitan region, he's been a leading voice. And he has said that he has talked about, you know, he and I have joked because he knows I love shopping and I prefer to do it in person. But he has said, you know, like not this year, you know, do it from home, do it online, try to shop local. You know, I'm a big believer, shop local and eat local and all that, but try to do it online. And if you have to go out, and okay, you have to go out, make sure that you social distance. Make sure that you wear your mask at all times. And that doesn't always happen. And so, as I said, I was in the grocery store right before Thanksgiving, and I had to turn around and say to the gentleman behind me, "Do you mind stepping back, you know, just a couple feet?" Because he was right next to me. He did have a mask on, but I was just like, "Oh, I don't know you, and I don't want to get sick, and please step back." And he did. You know, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was standing so close." And he stepped back. But people are not doing that. I also saw pictures of the airport, Dulles Airport, which is, you know, and the airport sits in Loudoun County. it was packed a couple of days, and people were not social distancing at all. They were wearing masks, but they weren't social distancing. And so many of those people, um, um, the travelers may not live in Loudoun, they may be traveling through, but the people work in Loudoun County and live in Loudoun County who work at Dulles Airport. So we're going to see numbers spike from Dulles Airport also.
Cool. Just to like a follow up, so about social distancing and masks, is there a plan to like mandate those in the future?
To do what? I'm sorry.
To mandate masks or social distancing?
So there are some places masks are already mandated. We have mandated masks in government facilities. I will tell you a true story. A couple of weeks ago, a lady was in the boardroom and she didn't have a mask on. And she was sitting way in the back. So I actually didn't notice her at first, but she kept yelling. And she kept yelling about how, COVID's not real and masks are not real. And it made me notice her. I mean, look up and see her. And so she wasn't wearing a mask. And so I said, ma'am, I'm sorry, but in the boardroom, there's a mandate that you wear a mask. And she refused, and then she said, I have a medical problem. I said, no, at this point I didn't really believe that, but I said, okay. I said, well, if you have a medical problem, there's ways we allow you to speak to us outside the boardroom. If you step outside, we'll get you on videotape so you can still talk to us. We do make arrangements for people who have medical issues. And so she said no again. The county administrator went back to talk to her. She had actually just attended a gun rights rally. So she had this huge poster board for gun rights. And so she put the poster board over her face and she goes, this is my mask. This is my mask. And we're like, no, ma'am, it's not your mask. So after about 5 minutes of that, I had had enough. And so I had her arrested. I had her arrested for trespassing in the boardroom. And the last thing I heard her say as she's headed out the door is, what do you mean you're arresting me? And I thought, you know what, I'm serious about this. And so there is a mask mandate in government facilities. And we have a strong encouragement to have masks everywhere. The governor has actually said that he will enforce the mandate. And the way it's enforced is if you are arrested, you're arrested for trespassing. And that's what we did in the boardroom. And I would tell you, we haven't had anybody in the boardroom not wear that mask again ever since that one time. And, it's not what you want to do. You certainly don't want to do something like that. But at some point, it's my job to protect my fellow colleagues on the board, to protect staff, and protect the public at large who also might be in the building, who absolutely will be in the building, actually.
Oh, okay, so a little bit shifting gears here about the economy. So it's been like a huge point with regards to COVID. So how exactly has our Loudoun economy fared with COVID going on?
Oh my God, what a great question. Okay, so there's two parts to that question. One is what the economy has fared like in the county government. And then the second part is what's the economy fared in Loudoun overall. So in county government, when COVID started, we froze $100 million in our budget. We approved budget positions. We approved new raises for government county employees, and then we froze it all, which was a really hard thing to do because what it meant was people who deserve raises didn't get their raises this year, and people and staff that needed more staff didn't get extra staff this year. But our conclusion, and my conclusion was, and I stand by this, is that it was more important to keep the county employees we had at the same pay that they had versus trying to give them a raise and then later on having to lay off people. We didn't want to do that. And so in Loudoun County's government, we haven't laid off not one person. Everyone's still there and at their current salary. But they also didn't get the raises, and they are probably a little short-staffed because they didn't get any new people. And so that has been tough, but we froze that $100 million early on. We also decided that we would unfreeze that money based on tax revenue. So we have to see the tax revenue that came in on the October 5th. And then based on that tax revenue, we will start unfreezing positions and be able to give people raises. Now, having said that, Loudoun County overall, just like the rest of the country, it's been tough. Now, Loudoun does a little better than most places because we're such a tech-heavy county. And so our data center revenue has been good, and people who have tech jobs have been good. In fact, about 85% of Loudoun residents have not really been impacted at all because they were able to move their jobs online. However, the people who were impacted are people who are in what's called the touch industries, so hotels and restaurants and events planners and things like that. So our unemployment rate in Loudoun County right now is about 9%, which is pretty high for us. But we also know that we will be able to recoup those jobs because those are mostly the touch industry jobs when we get a good vaccine that comes online. Finally, I will say that of the CARES Act money that we have received in Loudoun County, we've received $60 million. Of that $60 million, we've used, I think now 13 million to do what's called business interruption funds for businesses that we knew were going to have a hard time, especially our restaurant businesses. And we've tried to give them some CARES Act money. And the money wasn't meant to completely make up the revenue that they lost because that's impossible to do, but it was meant to kind of hold them for a while until we were able to get on their feet. I will say one last thing. If you really want to support Loudoun's businesses, support Loudoun's businesses. Like, order from local restaurants and do your shopping for Christmas at online shops and that type of thing. The best way to help Loudoun is to shop Loudoun.
Thank you. So we know that you have a robust background in mental health. So from a mental health perspective, how has Loudoun County fared?
Gosh, that's a great question. And it's the thing I am worried about the most. I would tell you that one thing I've asked the staff to do is set aside $500,000 because I think after COVID, there are going to be people who are just dealing with anxiety and some depression, but a lot of anxiety. 10% of Loudoun's population are veterans. Veterans do not do well with just having to be isolated for a long time. And so I'm worried about our veterans population. And I'm worried about kids your age, to be honest. I'm worried about you all not being in school. You all are kids who are just by your very nature and how you're raised, pretty socialized children, right? Or young people, I'm sorry. Pretty socialized young people. And so not being in school is hard. One thing that has me the most concerned is that the rates of reports of child abuse and neglect in Loudoun when COVID started dropped by 50%. I'm really worried about that because what we know is that the incidence of abuse and neglect didn't drop by 50%. The issue is children who have issues at their homes, usually that issue is discovered because the kids are in school. And so a teacher will notice something or a counselor will notice something. So the kids not being in school means no one is noticing and following what's going on with them. And so that rate has dropped. And so I'm really concerned about that. So yes, as a mental health therapist, I am very concerned about the anxiety, the isolation, and even anxiety that goes to depression in COVID. But all we can really do right now is make sure that everyone knows that if you're having these issues, you're isolated, but you're not alone. There are numbers to call. Please call the substance abuse and mental health hotline in Loudoun County. Please reach out to your friends and family. Please talk to somebody. And what we also know is that when this is over, we have put money aside to deal with these issues, but the connectivity is really important. And I would say since I'm talking to young people, I would say to you all, you are your best advocate for one another. So if you know that there's a kid who's having a hard time and you see him saying things in text or online or on social media that they wouldn't normally say, reach out to them and have somebody else reach out to them. I know that's hard because you feel like that maybe you're violating their confidence, but truthfully, you could be saving their life. And so I'm going to encourage all of you and all your listeners to do that.
Definitely.
Okay, so moving back to masks for a little bit here. So you said that incident with that woman from the gun rights rally not wanting to wear that mask, right? So are you seeing a lot of that kind of pushback on masks? Is it like a pretty partisan thing or people pretty acceptance?
What a great question. And yes, it's unfortunate that a virus has been made partisan. I mean, I don't even get that, right? Because
Yeah.
COVID does not care who you are. It does not care your political party. Before it enters your lungs and hospitalizes you, it's not going to check are you Republican or you're a Democrat or you're independent or you're a libertarian. It's not going to ask those questions, right? And so the fact that this virus has been politicized has been really unfortunate. I will say that there are a committed group of people in Loudoun County who refuse to wear a mask, but not a large group. In fact, a fairly small group. Dr. Goodfriend always says if we can get those last 10% wearing masks, we would be good. I will say that from about March on, there's been a rally every Friday, a protest outside my office every single Friday against mask wearing and against me, because I'm telling people to wear masks and to do all these things. And it's really pretty disturbing, because as people walk by those protesters, if they have masks on, they are jeered. And if they don't have masks on, they are cheered. And none of them out there ever have masks on, and they're sharing microphones and not social distancing and all those things. And I've driven by them before as they're like waving angry fists at me and having, horrible signs against me. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, lady, you're in a high-risk population. You can be out there mad at me if you want to, but you're going to end up in the hospital. You got to stop doing this. And so it hasn't been a lot of people, by no means, but it's been a committed group of people who have decided that they're not going to wear masks. Dr. Goodfriend have said if we can get mask wearing up to between 90 and 95% at all times over your mouth and your nose, that's what you need to do. And so, yeah, we've seen it. It's unfortunate. But what do you do? I will say also this: of the $60 million in CARES Act money that Loudoun received, we spent $9 million on PPE. And we bought masks and masks and masks so that we can freely share them with the schools, freely share them with towns, freely share them. I probably have it right here next to me or in my back seat. I have a box of masks that I keep with me at all times. And I am always passing out masks to strangers all the time when I don't see them have one. And most of them are like, thank you. So I pass out masks, literally all the time. I was in the other day Chipotle, and the kid tried to come in and they said, you can't come in without a mask. And I said, here, take a little package from me. And he was pretty happy actually to get that package of masks. So I'm always passing out masks, and we spent $9 million on PPE in Loudoun County.
Do you think the anti-mask stuff do you think that's mainly caused by some mental health thing or politics or both?
It's politics. It's not mental health. It's not mental health. People with mental health issues actually understand the need for good science, and they understand that science is real and numbers work and all those things. People with mental health is health, right? And people who are involved in the health system understand the importance of that. So it's not mental health. It is. I will tell you, when I look out my window and I see that protest, it's totally partisan. Every single person out there is in a particular political party, but it's not just that political party. It's the far end spectrum of that political party. So it's the fringe. So I don't want to, make it sound like everyone in the political party feels this way, because they don't. In fact, the vast majority do not. But it's the fringe and the spectrum of that political party that of one side that won't. And again, it's because the virus has been politicized, which makes no sense at all. And is really, really unfortunate, because it's a virus. It's a virus. It doesn't care who you are. But we've politicized it, and that in and of itself has made people, believe that not wearing a mask is some kind of, speaking to patriotism. When I say the opposite, I say wearing a mask is patriotic, because it's protecting you and your fellow American. And what's more patriotic than protecting your fellow American?
Yeah, definitely. Shifting gears though a bit. So what programs have been going on to address with COVID? I know you mentioned the business grants, maybe specifically mental health and other things.
So I keep going back to the CARES Act money, because when you get that CARES Act money, you have to say how you're going to spend it. And it was really hard to decide how much to put where and what we were going to do with it. And so I keep going back to that money. So some of the things that we've done with the CARES Act money, besides the fact that we spent a lot of money on the Business Interruption Fund and a lot of money on PPE, the largest sum of our money was spent in maybe not the largest sum, but close to the largest sum of our money was spent given to nonprofits and given to rental assistance programs, because people who've lost their jobs. Again, a lot of them are in the touch industries. The restaurants and things like that. A lot of those people are living like month to month or paycheck to paycheck, and they'll get evicted if we don't help them. And so we put a lot of money into the rental assistance fund so that they were not going to get evicted. I mean, the one thing you cannot have is families evicted during a pandemic. And so we did that. We also put money into our nonprofits. What we know is that government itself can do a lot and help a lot, but our nonprofits are out there and they know kind of their clients and their residents. And so we gave money to the nonprofits, especially the nonprofits that feed and house. And so Loud and Hunger Relief, we've given money to. The Dulles Area Food Pantry, Catholic Charities receive money. All those nonprofits that feed people, we've given money to. We've given some money to Laws, the Loudoun Area Women's Shelter, because again, that domestic violence rate right now kind of shot up pretty high. And so if a woman needs someplace for her and her children to go just to be safe, we gave money to Laws. And we've done 3 separate rounds of rental assistance. One of the rounds of rental assistance is really interesting because it's actually called non-conforming leases, which means you're leasing from somebody else. So you're renting a room in someone's house. That's called a non-conforming lease. And the CARES Act money didn't cover non-conforming leases. And so we use Loudoun County general funds, like our money, to do that, because whether or not you're in a non-conforming lease or a conforming lease doesn't really matter. We can't have you out on the streets in the middle of a pandemic. We don't want you out on the streets anytime. We definitely don't want you out in the streets in the middle of a pandemic. And as winter is coming, we're on December 31st, a lot of the federal grants money for rental assistance will run out. And so at the county level, we're going to have to figure out how to make sure that we continue to offer rental assistance.
Great.
So shifting from the CARES Act into the vaccine, so we know that there's been a new vaccine discovered that's pretty much guaranteed successful. So what are the county's plans for distributing that? Because it's a huge issue right now. How will people get a hold of this vaccine?
So there are 4 different vaccines right now that look very promising. It's Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson. The Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine both have an efficacy rate of about 90 to 95%, which is incredibly high. Usually if you get a rate of 50%, you're pretty happy. So 95% is very, very high. AstraZeneca's is a little less at about 75%, and Johnson & Johnson, I haven't got that rate yet. AstraZeneca's vaccine and Moderna's vaccine and Pfizer's vaccine both have to be stored at an incredibly low temperature. And so it does kind of make the distribution a little harder because you have to unfreeze it and then get it into people's bodies in a certain amount of time, because actually it doesn't go into your body at 95 degrees below zero, right? So you have to actually take some time and have it unfrozen, and then that's when you use it. Also, Moderna and Pfizer are both 2 vaccines, not 1. And so if you hear them say they have 20 million dose or 20 million shots available, it's really they really have 40 million, but it's yet each person has to get 2 shots. And so the Council of Governments and the Northern Virginia Regional Authority has been talking to all of the chief elected officials, and that's what I am. So the chairs of the mayors, about how to do this and how to distribute it and in what order to distribute it. So we believe that we will see our first ready to be distributed vaccines coming late December. And what we know is that it will be done in, well, they say 4 phases, but it's really 5 phases because phase 1 is phase 1A and phase 1B. I don't know why they call it like that. But anyway, phase 1A will be toward the end of this year. And that will go first and primarily to healthcare workers. For obvious reasons, right? If your healthcare system goes down, because you can have all the healthcare beds you want, But if you don't have doctors and nurses, respiratory therapists working, then it's not just the beds don't matter. And so healthcare workers first, and also in that first round, we believe would probably be first responders too. And then late first 1A to early 1B, congregate care people. So older people who are living in congregate care facilities. So people living in adult care facilities, nursing homes, continuing care facilities, they will be kind of next up. And again, this should now be somewhere in mid-January if things are going well. So that's 1A and 1B, and those are the the people we want to get to first, because those are the people who are most high risk and most of deaths. After 1A and 1B, then we go to essential workers. And it's interesting because we have thought differently what an essential worker is in COVID. So, an essential worker in COVID is you're the 17-year-old kid packing your groceries, right? Because he's he's around a lot of people. So we go to essential workers, and that would be stage 2. So essential workers, probably teachers at that point, anyone who has what's called pre-existing conditions, that would all be phase 2. And now we're probably into March. Phase 3 we start to do everyone else who has pre-existing conditions, and in phase 3 is when we start to probably look at starting to just vaccinate the general public. Start those things come early. And then phase 4, it's general public. So people who are younger, who are healthier, who don't have pre-existing conditions. So those are the phases we do. In Loudoun County, we have to figure out a way to do it in large, have to scale up large. So we are talking to all of our healthcare providers right now. We will talk to everyone, all of our pharmacists and all of our grocery stores. Just like you can go to the Giants and get a flu shot. We do them there. They will be free of charge. They will be free of charge, and so that everyone can get them. We will have COVID vaccination events, large-scale events. And so the hope is that by late spring, early summer, if we can get the vaccinations up to about 60% of people just in general, but about 80% of high risk people, then we'll be sitting in a good place. And so we believe that if everything goes well, that's what it will look like. AstraZeneca has recently had had some side effects they want to go back and look at. And Moderna just this morning has applied for emergency distribution. And so now we have 2, Pfizer and Moderna, that have applied for emergency distribution.
So you mentioned, of course, Pfizer, Moderna have relatively successful vaccines, and then you also mentioned one more. So is the plan to buy all of these and distribute all of them, or just focus on one?
So we don't know about AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. What I'm hearing right now is that Johnson & Johnson is only going to require 1 shot, so it won't require 2. Right, which is much easier to have just one shot. So we don't have to buy them because they're going to be given. I mean, these will not cost. So when I say it won't cost, I don't mean just in Loudoun. The U.S. government is not going to charge for the vaccine, right? And so we will get them. And the way it works is that the federal agencies hand them down to the state through the state health department, and then the state health departments go to the counties, and the counties go into the cities and towns, and it's kind of a distribution chain in that manner. And so what they will probably do is look at the states first that have the highest positivity rates at the time. Virginia has been very good. I mean, our positivity rates have been some of the lowest in the country. In fact, we're the 5th lowest in the country. I've said more than once that Virginia has the only governor in the county, in the country, that happens to be a doctor. It's Ralph Northam, and I think this worked really well for us because as a doctor, he's done a really good job in COVID. And so they'll look at probably numbers and see where the highest numbers are, where the highest density populations are, where the highest population of elderly are, which of course is probably Florida, Arizona. And they may try to do some of those first. But truthfully, once they start pumping these vaccines out, especially if you have 4 different companies putting them out, they will come pretty quickly.
So, like, is there a plan to make, like, will a vaccine become something like the, for example, like, we have flu shots and things that in some places stated like you have to have it. Like, do you think that the vaccine is going to become something like that, like a particular vaccine?
I don't know. That's a great question for Dr. Goodfriend. So I don't know. There are some vaccines for young people that you have to have before you go to school, because those illnesses, those viruses seem to really kill young people. Measles, mumps, rubella, pertussis. Those are ones that really seem to kill young people. Whereas COVID doesn't seem to, well, don't get me wrong, COVID will kill young people, and young people definitely can spread it. But it normally will the higher rate of death is among the elderly. And so I don't know if it will be mandated. The flu vaccination is not mandated, but I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage people to look at the vaccine, to talk to your doctor if you have any concerns, but to get the vaccine. Get the vaccine. I was saying to a friend of mine the other day who said, "Are you worried about side effects?" And I said, "I'm always worried about side effects, and I don't take vaccines lightly. But unless one of the side effects is death, right? I'll probably get the vaccine, because COVID is a dangerous virus. We have lost 250,000 people in this country to this virus. So let's get the vaccine." Anything else?
Yes.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Ryan, are you frozen?
No, it's for now.
No,
That's
No.
fine.
go ahead.
No one's frozen. You guys are all moving. You're all moving. You're fine.
Oh, okay. Ryan, it's
Oh, okay. So, how have rates of substance abuse been affected by COVID-19 in Loudoun County?
Well, again, you guys are asking the best questions. I wish. I gotta tell you, I wish there were some adults and I know you guys are older young people, but you're not quite adults yet. But I wish there were some adults that asked these questions. Rates of substance abuse across the country have gone up, but the rates we don't know for sure, because we're not seeing them as much. What we know is that that people who normally would go to the doctor to get medicine for their anxiety disorder or whatever disorder they may have may not be seeing their physicians, because they're concerned about going into a doctor's office or going into their therapist's office. And so then you start doing something called self-medicating, which is taking, like, drinking or using things yourself, self-medicating. Never do that. And I will also say that the one message that the hospitals have asked that we try to get out is that if you have a reason to come to your go to your doctor, call your doctor and go to your doctor. Mental health issues, again, mental health is health. So mental health, physical health, emotional health. If you have a reason to go see your doctor, go see them. Doctor's office, they're being very safe about COVID. They're being very safe about having people they let in the door. They're testing, they're doing all that. But don't not see your therapist or your support caregiver because you're worried about COVID. Also, a lot of the support groups have gone online. I know there are a lot of, like, I believe in 12-step programs, so the AA and the NA programs and all those things, Alcoholic Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, those have all gone online now. So you can see your healthcare provider in a telehealth way. You can go to your support groups in a telehealth way. Please, 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 please do that. This is probably a time that if you have supports in your life, because you have the disease of substance dependence, you need those supports more than ever, not less. And so please continue to do that and continue to go.
okay. So on that same topic on crime, right? You're saying that for what we've heard for like substance abuse, for child abuse, right? We're seeing that there are low reports, but that's just because no one's reporting it. Do you see
Exactly.
that for everything in Loudoun County? And do you believe that it's actually secretly spiking?
Yes and yes. Yes and yes. We've seen a lot of the rates go down. but it is because people are not reporting it. I mean, that is we know that. So I think it is absolutely spiking. I mean, think about it. You have a family that is already in the system because they've had some issues with neglect or abuse or something, and the family's back together and the family's doing well because they have all the supports in the world. They have enough food to eat, they have people to talk to, they have, parents have jobs, all those things are there. And then you take that family, you put them all in the house. The parents might lose their job, so now they're worried about paying their bills and they're worried about eating. And now the kids are home trying to do school online and all the stress that comes with that. Um, and at some point, that family that is doing okay with supports, when all those supports fall away and there's no net there to catch them, they're going to have more issues. And when they come back into seeing their support system, they would have gotten that much worse. And so I am very, very concerned. I have said more than once that and I don't control this. The school system controls this. I wish that schools were back in session for any parents that wanted their kids back in school. And in fact, the science says that if people are social distancing and wearing masks, if you can do temperature checks on kids as they come into the school buildings, teachers can sit behind plexiglass. If all those things are followed, then being in school is no higher risk than being anywhere else. And so I would like to see kids whose parents want them back in school to be back in school as soon as possible, because so many of these issues that we find because kids are in school.
So, speaking of kids and teachers and school and all that stuff, like I've seen like the news and stuff. Like, there's been protests from teachers unions and teachers about going back to school, about how they're concerned about the safety. So, what has been going on to address that or quell their concerns?
So that's actually more of a question for school board members than me. I will tell you that I have talked to the LEA, the Loudoun Education Association, and I've told them my position on schools. And their position is not, because like teachers want to teach. Teachers love their students. I mean, teachers, they don't do it for the money. God knows they do it for the love of the teacher and their students. And what they've said to me is that their hesitancy is not they don't want to go back to school. What they've said to me is they want to make sure they go back to school in the safest way possible to keep them safe and to keep their kids safe, their students safe, because they also worry about their own families. And so I have seen those protests as well, but I think that the protests are more about how you're going to keep us safe when we get back in the classroom versus we don't want to go back to the classroom at all.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's, like I've seen a lot of that protest stuff, and yeah, they kind of get what the teachers are talking about.
Sure, I do too. I have a brother-in-law who's a teacher in Atlanta, and they're back in school, but they've done so many things. He sits behind plexiglass when he teaches. For some
Wow.
of and it's a middle school. The teachers are actually changing class to class versus the students changing class to class. So the students go to one class, they bring all their things, and then the teachers go around. So during passing period, the people in the hallways are the teachers. Right, that makes good sense, right? So there are things that can be done, and our teachers are just asking that we do those things, and I think they're right. I mean, don't send them back in a dangerous situation. I don't blame them,
Yeah,
but I also know that they're teachers and they want to teach their kids.
definitely. So our final question is, unless anyone else has follow up. So, like you said, and like it's been seen, the senior citizens have been hit very hard. So, like, what is Loudoun County doing to like address senior citizens?
Well, that question alone could take me an hour, right? That has been just the hardest issue, and I'll tell you why. Well, lots of issues. One, because there have been some senior care facilities that have not been honest about what they need. Every single week, our Dr. Goodfriend and the health department calls our congregate care facilities and senior care facilities, and they says, "What do you need? Do you need PPE? Do you need staffing? What are your COVID numbers?" And if they tell us what they need, we do it like immediately we get that done. The problem is they don't always tell us what they need. And what ends up happening is they have to call their home office, which may be in Arizona or something, to find out what they can say. And in the meantime, people get sick. And we've had a couple of instances where they've lost so much staff because staff got either sick or exposed that they were not staffed in a way that could take care of the facility, and we had to send in staff from our hospitals. We had one place that the kitchen staff that feeds the residents got sick. And so we had to, and so I got a phone call from a daughter of a resident, and she said, they're not eating. And I went, what do you mean they're not eating? What? They're not eating? And so I thought, what? That's impossible. And I made some phone calls and found out that there was no kitchen staff to make their food. And so we sent staff in at that time also. And so the county has really encouraged our facilities, like if you have an issue, if you need PPE, if you need staff, if you need to be trained on how to use an N95 mask, whatever you need, please call us. And we will do that and probably get it done within 24 hours. It is much better now than when it started out, but early on, it was not going well at all. Right now, we have 2 senior facilities that have spikes, and one of them is a pretty large facility. And so, we've been talking to them on a daily basis. And one of the things we're trying to do is help them tell their residents what they need to tell their residents. And so we don't want to scare people, but kind of we do want to scare people because you really need to be so aware of this virus. If you're somebody who is, 75 years old and living in a senior facility, you're probably at high risk. And so we have we've gone in there and done some teaching. Now that facility is actually doing temperature checks for everybody that comes in the doors. There's signs everywhere that says not more than 2 people can be on an elevator or on a stairwell. And they're really talking to the residents. But early on, it was, the facilities themselves were not telling us what the issues were and what they needed. And so we had to just really say, listen, we're on your team. Like, we are all in this together. We are not trying to hurt your business. We know that your senior facility is a business and you want to make money. We want you to make money, but if your residents are dying, that's going to be a problem, right? And so we're going to try to help. So it's a lot better now than it was early on. We are very worried about the spike, though. We're worried about 2 weeks from now when the Thanksgiving spike hits, what that will look like for seniors and for everyone, to be honest. And so it's where we spend a lot of our time is with our seniors.
Well, thank you so much, Chair Randall. We really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for having this interview with us.
You know what? This was a great interview. I'm interviewed all the time, and I am not kidding when I say better questions have never been asked before than what you all just asked. So I hope you guys give this to all of, I don't know who your network is, but seriously, thank you for this, and really, really good job. I'm very proud of you all. And when COVID is over, I'd love to have you come to my office and do a tour and kind of spend some time with me in person.
Awesome. Do you mind if we had a word with you after this interview?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. Stop.